Cinnamon in the coffee today. Brewed cinnamon in the coffee. That's really nice. So on Christmas Eve, I'll attend a late afternoon or early evening Christmas service at St. Francis. And typically, I'll wear a green shirt on Christmas Eve. The reason for that is to try to balance out all the red, because you see a lot of red on Christmas Eve services, and I'll attend the most beautiful service that we have in that church in the entire year. And then I'll go home and the Christmas festivities will begin. And on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, this has been true just about every place I ever lived, you can walk outside and it's the quietest day of the year, the quietest evening and the quietest night of the year. It seems so peaceful and so tranquil, and you get this feeling that all is right with the world. There's peace and joy and happiness all over the place. And yet, in the midst of all this, as people around the world celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ in peace and tranquility, we know that very bad things are happening in many places all over the world. Every hour, every day, maybe even that very minute that we're enjoying all that peace and tranquility, and maybe not even that very far from us, very bad things are happening in the world and the area that we live in and in other areas all over the place. Strange, isn't it? That's a really strange dichotomy when you stop to think about it. We're celebrating the birth of Christ in peace and tranquility, and at the same time, lots of bad things are happening, even on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. There is a lady who lives very close to here, just over the wall, as a matter of fact, and on the day after Thanksgiving, she lost her grandson to suicide. She was traveling in some other states, and the suicide happened at home. It wasn't here. Even though there's a wall between us, I'd have known if something that tragic had happened. But in any case, she lost her grandson to suicide. Such a terrible thing to happen at any time, and it's even worse at this time of the year. And yet, the other night, I was passing by on the way to my property here, and I glanced in that front window, and there is the Christmas tree, beautiful Christmas tree, in the window of this home where they just suffered this terrible loss. And the first thought that comes to mind is, how can they do that in this terrible circumstance, in the wake of this terrible loss? And the answer is that that lady understands the real meaning of Christmas. The story of the birth of Christ in Luke chapter 2 and other places will be read and recited in churches and other places all over the world during the coming days. The story of the shepherds in the field, the announcement of the angels, the doxology of the angels, Mary and Joseph, and then the later visit of the wise men will be told over and over again. So I'm not going to read that at this time. It'll be read a lot in the coming days. But the basic story of the life of Jesus Christ is that he was born into the world of a Virgin Mary to do what none of us, I certainly can't do it, and nobody else can do it either. He was born to live a sinless life so that he could go to the cross and pay the death penalty that everybody who has ever lived incurred. He could pay that penalty and then rise to new life, and in doing that, he opened the door to paradise. He opened the door to a joyous life in eternity for all of the people of God. Eternity. That's one reason that we use evergreen trees as Christmas trees, because evergreen trees are always green. Evergreen. Eternity. So what will paradise be like? Now this is very important. It's very important to understand that you shouldn't get caught up in precisely what happens, precisely how it happens, precisely when it happens, and precisely in what order it happens. Because if you do that, you'll sink into this morass of conjecture and speculation and error. And I can tell you this, there are all kinds of people in the world running around, especially in the evangelical world, who think they know everything about everything. They think they have everything figured out, and they will gladly tell you that. Well, people who think they know it all, think they have everything figured out about what paradise, about what eternity will look like for the people of God. Those people who think they know everything usually get a bunch of things wrong, and it serves them right. But what was it that Christ came here to do by paying that sacrifice and opening the door to a joyous life in eternity? What will that life be like? Is there a way that we can know that? Actually, there is. Because it's described in a number of passages in the Bible. And although there are a lot of specific things that we aren't told, we are told some very general things about what life in eternity will be like, what the ultimate mission of Jesus coming into the world was all about. And I'm going to read some of those passages right now, and if you've never heard these, I think it's very important to hear. The first one is from the 35th chapter of Isaiah in the Old Testament, the entire chapter, Isaiah 35. And it says, "The wilderness and the solitary place shall be glad for them, and the desert shall rejoice and blossom as the rose. It shall blossom abundantly and rejoice, with the glory of Lebanon shall be given unto it, the excellency of Carmel and Sharon. They shall see the glory of the Lord and the excellency of our God. Strengthen the weak hands and confirm the feeble knees. Say to them that are of a fearful heart, Be strong, fear not. Behold, your God will come with vengeance, and even God with a recompense." Let's stop there for a comment. The problem of evil, all evil that has ever existed in the history of the world, will be dealt with. It seems like a lot of people get away with a lot of bad things, but it only seems that way, because ultimately nobody is getting away with anything. Continuing to read. "He will come and save you. Then the eyes of the blind shall be open, and the ears of the deaf shall be unstopped. Then shall the lame man leap like a deer, and the tongue of the dumb sing. For in the wilderness the waters shall break out, and streams in the desert. And the parched ground shall become a pool, and the thirsty land springs of water, and the habitation of dragons, where each lay shall be grass with reeds and rushes. And a highway shall be there, and it shall be called the way of holiness. The unclean shall not pass over it, but it shall be for those, the wayfaring men, though fools shall not err therein. No lion shall be there, nor any ravenous beast shall go up thereon. It shall not be found there, but the redeemed shall walk there, and the ransomed of the Lord shall return and come to Zion with songs and everlasting joy. They shall obtain joy, gladness, and sorrow shall flee away." So that is the entire chapter of Isaiah 35. Now, one verse from Isaiah 65:25. "The wolf and the lamb shall feed together, and the lion shall eat straw like the bullock, and dust shall be the serpent's meat. They shall not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain." Comment. Animals in heaven. Animals in paradise. When you compare this verse with what I just read, and it's undeniably a picture of paradise, you find animals living in paradise. But they're not responding. They're not acting in ways that we're familiar with. They have a changed nature, and that's a nature that none of us have ever seen on any large scale. And then one more passage from the book of Revelation 21, verses 1 through 4, the revelation to St. John the Divine. And those verses say, "And I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea. And I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a great voice out of heaven say, The tabernacle of God is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and he be their God, and God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes. There shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away." So there you have it, in 3 passages of the Bible, a description of what life in paradise will be like for eternity. Now think about this for just a minute. When you compare this joyous, wonderful life in eternity where there's no more death, no more sorrow, no more crying, no more pain, and all manner of diseases have been healed. Things that we thought that were impossible for people to recover from, they have been healed, and even the nature of the animals have been changed, and that's the way it is for all eternity. We'll stop and think about this. All of the pain and suffering and loss which happens in this life and is temporary doesn't even matter, does it? When you compare this life to the eternity I just described, none of the bad things that happen in this life even matter, although it seems like they do. Now, even for people who know this, it's easy to forget, because what happened? Well, every day happens. People have their jobs with all of the office politics and shop floor politics and all of that. People experience unemployment. They go through problems in school. They experience illnesses, suffering, pain, death, loss, loneliness, all of that. And that's what this current physical life is like. But this current physical life is temporary. I just described what can only be a description of the afterlife, what can only be a description of life in eternity for the children of God. I mean, because none of us have ever seen anything like this. I've never seen anything like what I just described. Have you? I don't think so, my friend. And so, that's the life that awaits the children of God, and it lasts for all eternity, and compared to eternity, nothing that happens now even matters. And yet there are things that we need to do in this world in gratitude for that future life, and that is to be kind, loving, and considerate, and try to make this present life as good as it can be for other people. The basic reason for suffering is to allow us to develop compassion and kindness, and that should be obvious through the sacrifice that Christ made, giving his life and going to the cross. That should be obvious. It is not obvious to many people, even a lot of professing Christians, but the point of suffering is to develop compassion. That's the point. And the lesson is so big that we never stop learning it. And that's why it goes on throughout our entire life. So I've just given you a general picture of the life that awaits the people of God in paradise, in eternity, and by comparison, this life doesn't even matter. And that's what Christmas is all about. It's about that future life in eternity where there's no more poverty, disease, no more pain, no more sorrow. Even the nature of the animals has been changed, and all illnesses of every kind have been healed, and the problem of evil has been dealt with because nobody gets away with anything. And what a wonderful future that is. And so that's what we celebrate on Christmas, because that's that's the opportunity that Jesus came in the world to give us, to live that sinless life, to die and pay all of our penalties so we wouldn't have to pay it and would have the opportunity to enter into paradise. So as you celebrate this Christmas season, remember those passages that I just read. And it makes a lot more sense that we celebrate in peace and joy in the midst of all this suffering, because all the suffering, all the bad, is temporary, and it is nothing compared to that future. So if you haven't thought about this in a very long time, or haven't given it a lot of thought lately, I encourage you to think about it a lot this Christmas season, because those passages I just read, that's what we're really celebrating, because that is the purpose of Christ's life in the world. It is the purpose of Christmas. I hope that's given you some things to think about this wonderful Christmas season. And wherever you are, I wish you a very happy, peaceful, joyous, and Merry Christmas.